Hello, everybody. Hey, we have Eduardo already has questions for us. Hello, Eddie. Hope you are doing well. I'm following the one range approach and see great results. Woohoo, hoo-hoo. We like that. We like when people report in, especially when it's our regulars, especially after the day off. You're right. Do you think the great trumpet players from the past knew something about how to create a plan where light days and days off were contemplated? I'm talking about trumpet players like Dizzy Clifford and Maurice Andre. I don't think they did this. I have theories about this. I don't think they were. No, I don't think this was a thing. You know, it's quite possible that I made this up. Um, to a degree, right? It's so I will tell you, I have that book. I think the guy's name is Spalding, where he says if you want to get a double high C, um, practice only every other day. And I will tell you that book, even though I never practiced out of it, I do have the book. I've read it. Um, but I do think that he sort of influenced me in this regard. But other than that, I've never heard of anybody doing this, like heavy days, light days, and stuff like that. I've been a connoisseur of trumpet pedagogy for just about my whole life. When I in the '90s, I wanted to buy every trumpet book there was, and then I realized that there was nobody can do that. But I bought a lot of books, and now with the internet, you get to hear so many different ways of doing things and stuff like that. And yeah, I've not heard anybody even hint. Um, the goings philosophy back in those days was that if you want consistency, that you need to be consistent. And on a purely logical level, that sounds like it makes sense, right? If you want consistency, you need to be consistent. But it's not based on anything except for the inflammation based embouchure. Obviously, that's actually true for them. So, hello, Sean. Sean says, "Hi, Eddie. I've been doing just the C tonalization until I have all 20 patterns down before moving on to the rest. Is that an okay approach?" No, that's not an okay approach. That's not an okay approach. You know, you guys remind me sometimes. I remember when I first started my newsletter. I remember one of my first articles because back in those days, hello, David, nice to see you. Back in those days, I used to have people that were maybe 5 to 10 years younger than me back in the '90s that would hang out with me and they wanted to hear what I had to say. And that's been true, that's been true my whole life. People have always wanted, you know, it's just part of my personality. I like to share what I know. I've always liked it. And because people know that I like to share, there have been times in my life where people flock to that, right? Um, and so, yes, there were people that And back in those days, it was all jazz stuff, right? Because I was already established in Houston as a jazz player. And um, I would say to them, you need to go to a jam session. You need to go to a jam session. And their answer was always, I'll go when I'm ready to go. When I feel like I'm ready to go, then I'll go to a jam session. You know what the problem with that is? You're never ready. So I wrote an article in my early, um, what do you call it, newsletter days called "When Will You Be Ready?" And the nature of the article was um, that our satisfaction with our own playing is like the carrot on the end of the stick, the proverbial carrot in front of the donkey. The farther we progress, the farther still our desires go. You think about that, right? The more we, I said farther, the word is actually further, sorry. The further we progress, I guess if we're talking about a donkey, then the word is farther, okay? The further we progress, the more our expectations progress. And you never feel like you're ready to go to the jam session. Now, what's that got to do with what Sean says? Um, when do you decide you're ready to move on? That's why I'm a believer in setting the number. It can be 5 times, it can be 10 times. I have a student that's doing 30 times. Um, and it can be one time. I just do one time, by the way. But it's beneficial to do 5 times. It's beneficial to do 10 times. But when that 10 times is over, you move on to the next key. If you hang out, and don't forget where this comes from. I've told you guys before the story about my brother. We used to go to the gym together when I was in college. Both of my brothers were jocks in school, football players, and I was skinny as a stick. And I thought, well, you know what would be good for me to work out with weights. So I had my brother teach me. And I noticed that this pick was bigger than this pick. I even noticed back then. I didn't understand why. I only figured out why many years later. Um, and I asked my brother, he doesn't remember this at all. I asked my brother, how do I make them both the same size? Do I make do I do more weight or more reps on one side than the other? He says, no, if you want them to be the same size, you do more on both. And that wisdom, we live in a world that's almost preoccupied with equality, but it's that wrong thinking that I had. Do I do I give more to one side than the other? And really, what we need to do to fix equality problems is give more to both, give more to everybody. I'm not a liberal, um, but you guys know that I'm not also a very outspoken. And maybe that's just because of the field I'm in. um, but I'm not a very outspoken in terms of politics and stuff like that. But and you know what? For me, the politics stuff, this is just a short tangent. For me, the politics stuff is an outgrowth from my moral and ethical beliefs. It's not just something I chose. And the I didn't choose a team. I hate that whole team mentality when it comes to politics. People should actually vote according to what they believe, but that's not how it works. People vote according to their party. Anyway, why am I talking about this? Is because I think equality is answered. Now, when I say give everybody more, I don't give all sides more. I don't mean handouts. I'm not talking about that. I think handouts make people weak. Um, anyway, I shouldn't be talking about this stuff. Gary, hello, Gary. Gary says, "Hi, Eddie. I'm trying to work through the Arvin book lately and struggled by the time I hit scales. I couldn't even make it to the minor scales. How important are minors? Should we do them as much as majors?" Yes. So, are you going through the whole book in one day? That's what you make it sound like. Like you're trying to go through the whole book in one day. I used to do that kind of stuff, and that's how I ended up creating a one range approach because it's not possible. It's not possible. Oh, okay. He says he did, it's 2 sessions. He did 30 pages the first day, 30 pages the next. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. If you know your reason to do that, then I myself couldn't think of a reason to approach the organ that way. The Arvin is not a method, by the way. It's actually a misnomer to call the Arvin a trumpet method. You actually need, and I don't know if this is still for sale because the guy passed away during COVID. Um, a friend of mine, internet friend, the Arvin Study Guide. Eric, yeah, by Eric Bolvin. I wonder who's collecting his royalties now. Um, oh, he calls it the Arvin Manual. If you have a book like that to help guide you through the Arvin, now I'm not familiar with his book. I'm not familiar with it. I don't know how he goes through it, but I know that he's got it organized into a method. That's what we're talking about. Is that um, the book by itself is not a method. So Eric Bolvin, like I said, has a book. It's a downloadable book at the Q Press website. Sean says the plan was when I can play them all by memory. No. When you can play them all by memory. Yeah, I don't like that. I think sometimes that people, because I'm a firm believer in sounding terrible. Right? I'm a firm believer in sounding terrible. We discussed this a few weeks ago with the air in the routines. That if you haven't mastered your lips yet, but you do the air correctly, it's supposed to sound awful. And so we've talked about that before. The same thing is true with the tonalization studies. They are called tonalization studies because we want to spend time. So and this gets to the point, by the way. We want to spend time in each key so that we think in the key. The problem with doing some keys longer is that you are going to spend less time on some other key. The only way to make sure that all the keys are treated equally is by making sure you actually treat the keys equally, the same number of times through every exercise. You choose before you start. 1, 5, 10. You can do 3. But yes, there's no benefit to slowing down like that because of what I told you about the donkey and the carrot. When do you decide that it's time to move on? If you have even an ounce of self, what's that word called? I remember teaching my son what is it called? Self-evaluation. Self-evaluation. If you have even an ounce of that, it will prevent you from ever moving on from C. You will always, constantly be saying to yourself, this is not good enough. And if you don't have that, if you don't have self evaluation as a skill for your music, you'll never be a great player, ever. So it's a catch 22. You have to, at some point, say, this is not good enough for me. But it's going to come back around soon enough anyway. And I'm going to tell you this too. When you play the other keys, it benefits the key of C. When you play D flat, D, E flat, E, F, F sharp, G, A flat, A, B flat, B, when you play those keys, it makes you better at C. It makes you better at all of the keys. And it's not even additive. Is that the word? Um, it's exponential. Maybe I shouldn't say exponential. I actually criticized somebody the other day online. Um, not to them, but to my wife. I I said that's not what exponential means, and now I'm guilty of it too. So learning the other keys multiplies your ability in each of the keys, not just adding, right? It's not a one-to-one equation. When you make yourself go through all the keys, your understanding of the keys increases. And with that understanding is better skill. But you don't get that if you're just hovering around in the key of C. Hello, Kevin. Kevin says, Mr. Lewis, if a person has not already been through all of the keys and is not already thinking in some keys like A and E, how long should we spend on each key? That's a great question. Um, I alternate between 5 and 10 days. Sometimes, and when I say alternate, I'm talking about one student to the next. So, um, so I might have, for example, a student that's, in fact, I do. I have a student, he's the brother of another student I teach. I think I started him either in kindergarten or first grade. And I don't even know, I don't think he's in school yet. He might be in school. If he's in school, I mean junior high. He's not in junior high yet. Um, so in other words, he's still in elementary school. I've been teaching him, I think, for 2 years now. And with him, we just do 5 because I'm almost certain he's not practicing that stuff on his own at home. And if we do, so that means 5 weeks before he goes to another key. You know, I'm going to tell you. Kevin says, thank you. I've been parked too long than trying to get to where it's subconscious. Yes, see, that's the same problem, right? Don't do that. Yeah, so David says, I rotate through the keys in the tonalization studies 1 per week. That really is a good formula. That's a good formula. So, yes, don't camp out too long. There's no benefit to it. It really does become, because when you camp out like that, it's just like what we're talking about. It creates some mental problems, right? Now, I don't mind, by the way, if you want to do 30 days, let's say this, whatever you are on now, finish that first. I've said that before in these Q and A's. If you're doing 30, don't quit 30 until you finish 30. If you're doing 10, don't quit 10 until you finish 10. If you're doing 5, don't quit until you finish. If you're doing just 1, don't quit until you finish. Always complete the cycle before you change it. David says the key of C, the Miles Davis key. All right, so yes, you know, the older I get, the more concerned I am with the mental stuff. And I don't mean mental as in I don't want you to be frustrated. I don't want you to have anxiety. Um, Mental in the sense that how we think affects how we play. And yes, of course, anxiety will cause that, depending on what kind of anxiety it is. If you're anxious about your dog at the vet, I don't know why that popped into my head. If you're anxious about your dog at the vet, I don't think that's a problem for your trumpet playing. In fact, it gives you something to express when you're playing something lyrical. So it's not that we don't want any anxiety. What we don't want is the kind of thoughts that work against your playing. And the best example I have of that is the kind of thought. And so I call it a thought, right? So it is mental, but it's mental in the sense of what are you thinking? And if you think and believe that the higher you go, that the relationship between high notes and how hard you have to try, if you think that's a linear relationship and that the higher you go, the harder you have to try, that's going to cause problems in your playing. That's what I mean by mental. It's not new age nonsense. It's not finding peace. It's not finding, now I do teach a peace thing where you should have peace in the practice process, the procedure. You should have that. But peace, like overall um, peace, like I don't know, like new age peace. I don't think that helps your trumpet. Um, Sean says, while going through each key, I'm assuming then that you will eventually memorize the two. What's 2P? I don't understand what 2P is. Let me tell you about the memorizing thing. Oh, 20. So with the jazz students, I do say that everything should be by memory. But there's a problem with the tonalization studies if you don't know how they go yet. Hello, Seppo. If you don't know how they go yet, then it's um okay. So I understand where there can be some confusion here, right? Let me tell you how I do the classical guys. We do 5 or 10. I told you guys it depends on the student. 5 or 10 times through each key till you get around. Hello, Larry. Nice to see you. And then you do another time through. After you've done them 5 or 10 times each through 2 cycles, it's very uncommon for students to struggle with playing them by memory. So I've corrected you guys before with the jazz stuff. The only thing we memorize in my jazz method is the head to the song. Well, also the chord progressions. Um, you can do that too. Not on your horn, no. I'm talking about like write down all the chords in the song. You can do that by memory. You'll notice that I don't say memorize. I'm careful about the wording on this. I never say memorize the tonalization studies. I never say that because that's not what I want you to do. I never say memorize the tendency tones. I don't even say now. If I do say this about the etude, I apologize. But the objective is not to memorize. There's no benefit in memorizing any of those things. I don't use that word. I try not to use that word. I say, play them by memory. And you can say, well, how do I play them by memory if I don't memorize them first? It's a matter of short term and long term. Like the tonalization, I mean, not the tonalization, the tendency tone studies, right? You work backwards on it. You, let's say you break it down into 4 measures. You can do 2 measures, you can do 4 measures, you can do 8 measures. It depends on your skill level. You do the last 2 or 4 bars and you look at it, you sing and finger it while you're looking at it. Then you look away and you play it. That's what I mean by play it by memory. It's not, the objective is not, this is not like learning a concerto. The objective is not to be able to recall it when I see you. And, you know, Sean, the last time you were here, I told you that. That's not the objective. The objective is to play it by memory. You know, let me give you an example. I'm the one that wrote the tendency tones that you use. I'm the one that wrote those. And yet, if a student asks me, will you play the tendency tones by memory for this song? The answer is usually no, I can't. I don't have those songs, those exercises memorized. I don't have those memorized. That wasn't the objective. I don't have the motif sheets memorized. That was never the objective. The objective was always to play them by memory. So if I'm doing, for example, the motif sheets, I look at, I figure it, and then I look at it again. And back and forth like that. The benefit that we get from playing them by memory has already been had when we do what we just did. That is the benefit. You get through that whole 10 times on that one lick. You already got the benefit. There's no extra benefit for having it memorized. Okay. So I'm going to say it again. This is not about, it's the same thing as with the tonalization studies. In my intention all along, when I said play the tonalization studies by memory, should have been exactly the same as what I just showed you. Look at it, sing and finger it. I'm going fast just because I don't want to waste your time, waste our time. Then Then, after you were reading it, singing it, fingering it, look away. Then you go to the next one and you sing and finger that one while you're looking at it. Then you look away. Okay? So be very, very careful. The words that I use are. Now, don't get me wrong, I do make mistakes sometimes. But I am very careful not to say, memorize this and memorize that. Yes, memorize the head. Do that. Because that does need to be recalled just the way you would a classical concerto. Yes, memorize the head. But don't memorize all that other stuff. You know where I got this? I got this from a remark that Wynton Marsalis made back in the 80s. He came to UTEP and he was working with our band. And there were several times he said, memorize it and forget it. Memorize it, forget it. Get to where you can play it by memory. Then make yourself forget it. He said that several times in that short period when he was with our band. He said it several times, and I took that to heart. So the stuff that I do and the stuff that I teach you guys for the jazz is not to be memorized. It's supposed to be played by memory. That's not the same thing. Hello, Seppo. Nice to see you. I think I said that already. And Larry. Sean says, sorry, Eddie. I guess I got learning the patterns and memorizing the patterns confused. My apologies. You know, it happens. I wish I could. I wish I had a book that has all this stuff in it. And to be honest, that's why we have the Q and A, is to work through this stuff. That's why we have the Q and A. What other questions do you guys have? I'm a little behind on my drinking. I've experimented this week. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a lot more awake today. No yawning and all that stuff. I've been trying to drink more than what they say. And it's actually working. You know, the problem with doctors today is they think everybody's the same. They don't think that, but in the end, when you look at how they operate, everybody's the same. And the fact that I'm still urinating would be an indication that the hydration stuff is not the same for me as it is for everybody else. So I'm a little behind on my drinking. That's why I've got this. Isn't that a pretty cup? I think my mom sent me this. She knows how much I love birds. They look like the partridges on the Partridge Family, huh? So Sean, don't stress over it. Not so it's One of the problems with being different from most other teachers is that the language isn't already there. I'm not just spouting off stuff that other people spouted to me, right? So I don't always have the best way to say some of the stuff I say. Larry says, I've also been learning, studying, trying lip trills, but there is a point where I can't do them faster. How do I overcome that obstacle? There's two different kinds of lip trill. We don't always want the lip trill to be fast. Um, generally speaking, I do fast lip trills in Latin music, and physically they're different. And then I do slower lip trills. Oh, you're saying lip trill. Oh, like classical stuff. Is that what you mean? Let's, Larry, will you please clarify? Are you talking about classical lip trills? So, so the problem with lip trills is it's not really a trill if it's in the lower register. You don't do right. That's not a lip trill, right? So it has to be from F. Well, I guess you could all use alternate fingerings. Right, you can do a lip trill with alternate fingerings as long as it's not too low. Oh, so you're talking about lip trill, lip slurs. Okay. So because a lip trill is musical and the Collins book is not. The Collins book is exercises. And yes, there is a little bit of a connection between, but if you but the rest of the book is all, yeah. So this reminds me of something that I tell people all the time. We do exercises and physical stuff always with a musical purpose. The way I normally say it is all physical work is for musical reasons. This is one of the reasons why I believe in uh, uh, the what I call the 50% rule. I almost had a blank. Um, the 50% rule keeps your mind always filled with musical objectives. So when you say, "Oh, I'm not doing this lip slur fast enough," to me, that kind of thinking is anti-musical. What problem are you solving in your music side that's going to be solved with those lip slurs? That's how you have to think. Just making the lip slurs better for their own sake can take you in some extremely bizarre directions. And this is true for every exercise. Just trying to perfect the exercise for its own sake will give you technique that has no value. Once again, that's why we do the 50% rule. At least, and by the way, this 50% rule is not just for my method. If I have a student, and this does happen sometimes, if I have a student that I think because of the shape of the face and how they play and what kind of embouchure they have. If I think they shouldn't be doing my method, the physical trumpet pyramid, the routines, the one range, if I think they shouldn't be doing that because of what I see and what I hear, I'm still going to have them do the 50% rule. Because what do you do without it? So I'm going to ask you, Larry. I'll put you on the spot. What musical problem are you addressing by trying to do what you're calling lip trills faster? What musical problem are you addressing? And was that musical problem the objective when you started trying to do this? I hate to put you on the spot, but I'm trying to make a point here, because I'm going to tell you, most people did not have a musical objective when they pursue that. They thought, as a lot of people do, that if they play better on the exercises, then they will be a better player. And it's just not true. I have heard in my career, a great number of trumpet players who play wonderful on exercises and terrible in the music. Larry says sometimes in jazz charts, the trumpet section does a trill or during a solo. So that's what I was saying earlier. So if that's why you're doing those exercises, um, there is some benefit to the shakes. We don't call them trills, right? They're shakes. There are some benefits to the shakes for doing the classical lip slurs. There are some benefits. But with the exception of Latin music, we don't really shake that fast. Let me put my other mouthpiece in. I'm just making this up, but here's an example of a swung shake. See how it's not really. We're not doing that. There's a little bit of that at the very end, but that's not even necessary. Let me try to take that out. Okay, so that's really as fast as it needs to go. However, if we're playing a Latin chart, I do go faster. You hear the difference in that? It's not just faster, it's also a different style of shake. And I'll tell you, I might use a tiny bit of jaw in my shake for a jazz tune, just a tiny bit. I use a lot of jaw on a Latin chart. Like if I'm playing a salsa gig, I use a lot of jaw. I call it chewing on a note. It's very similar to a classical vibrato. Sometimes my shakes are too fast, and I'm like disappointed with myself afterwards because there's no style in a fast shake. I'm not talking about the Latin stuff. The Latin stuff is correct to do that, but the um, the jazz stuff doesn't sound good fast. It really doesn't. Unless a composer, like the guy that wrote the chart, unless he says specifically that he wants fast shakes, I wouldn't put a fast shake. Any other questions? Oh, then you were asking what I would say if someone's trying to do better on the faster shake. That's what I would do. I would make it um, more with my jaw. If you have to go faster, the jaw is the way to make that happen. There are people that do finger shakes. I'm not a big fan of that, especially if I'm playing lead because I don't want to bust my lip up. So I'm not personally a big fan of that. I don't have a problem with other people doing it. But personally I'm not a big fan. Any other questions? Any other questions? Any other questions? Any clarification on previous questions? I think the theme for this one today has been tonalization studies. When to move on. Anyone want any more clarification on that? Just so you guys know, I still teach the lip trills out of the. Oh, like I just used the wrong word again. I still teach that page out of the Arvin book that has lip slurs all the way down. I still teach that as a way of working on the shakes. That's the first. If I have a student that can't do a shake, that's the first thing we do. Any other questions? I guess we can close it down. Oh, here we go. Seppo says, I never mastered the fast shake. Even I practiced it a lot. It, if it it's seldom needed, but nice when the time comes. That's right. So I keep forgetting. Kevin is asking, do I remember what page that's on? I keep forgetting. I do think I have a PDF, and that would tell me what page. Let me look real quick for it. Arvin 22. Now, that's not page 22. That's exercise 22. It's on page 44 of the old traditional Arvin. So, yes, I still teach that. I think it's the only page I teach out of the Arvin book anymore. And I make people angry because I tell them my books are better. Woo! That's like saying, like you're a Greek saying Hercules was a weakling. Because this is all like for the trumpet gods, that's their Bible. And if you say that your stuff is better, ooh, they get angry about that. So David asks, can I explain how I use motifs in my jazz studies? So we want to have as many of them as we can. So I'm going to answer your question the way it's worded first. I'm going to do an improv right now. So the way you have it worded, how do I use motifs in my jazz? Okay, you use the word studies though. So we want enough motifs that we can string them together. So I'm basically stringing together a long list of motifs, and all of them that I do now are motifs from the that people have been using since forever. Now we can have, and I do this. We can have motifs that are modern. So those were a bunch of chordal, Quartal, chordal motifs that I strung together. And you can have a single chordal motif. I like to start. I like to have like a couple of chordal motifs at the beginning of a line sometimes. I'll do chordal motifs at the end. But yes, those are more modern. Now, how do I use them in my jazz studies? You have to collect a bunch of them. You have to collect a bunch of them. I don't know if you and I did a motif sheet that was blank. I don't know if we got that far. If you need a blank motif sheet that you can, so that you can collect some on your own, let me know and I'll send that to you. It's set up so that you create your own licks with your own that you collect from your own listening, from your own transcriptions, from books uh, that you've read, transcription books. Um, you can get them from uh, PDF, free PDFs online, stuff like that. But that's how I do it in my studies. Is I just collect and collect and collect and collect and collect. And then, of course, you have to do them. And when I collect them, by the way, I collect them in the key of C. So whatever original key that they were in, I transpose it always to the key of C. That way, when I play through them in a different key, it's a lot easier. I don't have to do any extra math just to play the motifs. Okay, I guess we're out of time. Um, well, great. You guys always have great questions. Um, we'll see you next week. There's a shakeup coming on right with each new school year, there's always stuff coming up, and so um, just like we always do, we'll um, we'll update you with the schedule so that you know when to come in here. All right, so great Q and A. We'll see you guys next week. God bless you and have a great weekend.